Time is the one resource we all possess, yet it's the only one that, once lost, never returns. Money can be earned again, opportunities can be recreated, even relationships can sometimes be repaired. But time slips through our fingers like sand, never to be grasped again. And still, despite knowing this truth deep down, so many of us treat time as if it were unlimited. We push things to tomorrow, we say later, we think there will always be more chances. But life has a way of teaching us that the price of wasted time is heavier than anything we can imagine. Today, I want to take you on a journey. A story that may feel all too familiar, yet has the power to shake you awake. Because once you truly see the cost of wasted time, you'll never look at your hours and minutes the same way again. In a busy city filled with the constant hum of traffic and the glowing lights of endless skyscrapers, there lived a boy named Ethan. Ethan wasn't average, he was bright, witty, and full of potential. Teachers admired his sharp mind, friends admired his confidence, and his parents proudly believed he would one day achieve great things. But Ethan had one habit that overshadowed all his gifts. He was careless with his time. Whenever he had homework, he would push it off until the last minute. Whenever there was a chance to learn something new, he told himself he'd get to it later. His favorite phrase was always, "I still have time." Hours slipped away in video games, in scrolling through his phone, in endless conversations with friends that led nowhere. He wasn't lazy in the way people usually think of laziness. He wasn't lying in bed all day refusing to move. He was active, busy even, but busy with things that didn't matter, things that chipped away at his future without him realizing it. One evening, after another long day of distractions, Ethan's father called him into the living room. His father had always been gentle, rarely strict, but this time his tone carried a seriousness Ethan wasn't used to. "Ethan," he said, "do you know what separates successful people from those who live their whole lives in regret?" Ethan shrugged, not really interested. His father leaned closer and said, "It's how they value their time. The people who understand the worth of every minute, they rise above. Those who waste it, they watch their dreams fade away." Ethan smiled and nodded as if he understood, but the truth was he didn't feel the urgency. He thought, "I'm still young, I'll get serious later." That later became his silent enemy, though he didn't know it yet. Weeks passed, and exam season arrived. Ethan, confident in his natural intelligence, thought he could prepare everything in just a few days. After all, he had done well before with minimal effort. But this time, things were different. The exams were harder, the competition tougher, and his last-minute studying couldn't cover everything. For the first time, Ethan walked out of the exam hall with a heavy heart, realizing he had not done well. When results were announced, his world crumbled. He wasn't at the top anymore. In fact, his grades were far below average. The boy everyone once admired was suddenly the boy everyone pitied. Teachers were disappointed, friends slowly drifted away, and even at home, the silence of his parents' eyes cut deeper than any words could. That night, Ethan sat alone in his room, staring at the ceiling. He thought about all the hours he had thrown away, the endless times he said later, the games he played instead of practicing, the distractions he chose instead of focusing. The truth weighed on him. His failure wasn't because he lacked intelligence, it wasn't because life was unfair, it was because he didn't value his time. For the first time in his life, he realized time was not unlimited. It was slipping away each second, and once gone, it could never return. That realization shook him to his core. But Ethan's story didn't end there. The pain of his failure pushed him to seek answers. The next day, he went to visit his grandfather, a man known in the family for his wisdom. His grandfather had once been a respected professor, someone who spent his life teaching others not just facts but principles to live by. When Ethan sat down, he poured his heart out. "Grandpa," he said with tears in his eyes, "I don't understand what went wrong. I used to do well. Everyone believed in me. And now, I feel like I've lost everything." His grandfather listened patiently, nodding slowly. After a pause, he leaned forward and said, "Ethan, intelligence without discipline is like a sword left to rust. It looks powerful, but when you finally need it, it breaks." Ethan frowned, trying to understand. His grandfather continued, "Your problem is not your ability, it's your respect for time. You treat it as if it's infinite. But son, time is life itself. To waste time is to waste your life." Those words struck Ethan deeply. His grandfather then shared a story, not unlike a parable. Many years ago, he began, there was a man named David. David wasn't born rich, but he worked hard, built a successful company, and became known as a rising star in the business world. For years, his discipline and focus were his greatest weapons. But once he tasted success, he forgot the very thing that built it, his respect for time. He began waking up late, postponing important meetings, ignoring the little details. "I'll handle it later," he used to say. At first, nothing seemed wrong. But slowly, cracks appeared. Competitors overtook him, opportunities slipped away, and his once booming company began to collapse. By the time David realized the damage, it was too late. He lost everything, not because he wasn't capable, but because he wasted the one thing he could never get back, time. Ethan listened silently, his heart pounding. He could see himself in David's mistake, even though his own life was just beginning. His grandfather's story wasn't just about business, it was about life itself. How many people say, "I'll do it tomorrow," until tomorrow never comes? How many dreams die, not because people weren't capable, but because they were too busy wasting their minutes? Ethan felt as if a mirror had been held up to him, showing the truth he had tried to avoid. That night, Ethan made a decision. He didn't want to become another David. He didn't want his life to be a story of wasted potential. He promised himself that from that moment, he would treat time like the treasure it truly was. He started by making small changes, setting a study schedule, reducing his time on his phone, focusing 1 hour at a time. It wasn't easy. The temptations of distraction were still there, calling him every day. But each time he resisted, he felt stronger. Each day he respected his time, he felt closer to the person he wanted to become. Days turned into weeks, and the small changes Ethan made began to show results. He no longer slept in as he used to, and instead of wasting hours on his phone, he filled notebooks with ideas, lessons, and reflections. At first, it felt like climbing a steep hill. His mind still craved distraction, his body still leaned toward comfort, but each step made him stronger. Slowly, his parents noticed the change. They saw their son, once careless with his time, becoming disciplined, more focused, and more determined than ever. His teachers, too, began to see flashes of the old Ethan, the gifted student they once admired. Yet what surprised everyone most was not the improvement in his grades, but the transformation in his attitude. Ethan was no longer racing against deadlines at the last minute. He was ahead of the curve. For the first time, he experienced the joy of being prepared. One evening, while sitting at his desk revising his lessons, Ethan paused. He thought about the countless evenings he had wasted before, scrolling endlessly, playing games, laughing at jokes that had no meaning beyond a fleeting moment. Those nights felt so empty compared to the satisfaction he now felt. He realized something profound: pleasure fades quickly, but progress stays with you. The hours he wasted before had given him nothing but regret, but the hours he invested in himself now were building a foundation he could stand on for life. The contrast was so sharp, it felt like a revelation. He whispered to himself, "This is what real success feels like, not the praise of others, but the peace of knowing I didn't waste today." But as Ethan's life began to improve, temptation didn't vanish. One afternoon, his friends invited him out. They wanted to hang out, play games, and spend the day doing what they always used to do. For a moment, Ethan felt that old pull. He wanted to join, to laugh, to escape responsibility. But then he remembered his grandfather's words, "Time is life itself. To waste time is to waste your life." He thought about David, the man who had lost everything because he ignored time. He thought about his own failure, the pain of seeing his parents' disappointment, and the shame of letting himself down. With a deep breath, he shook his head and said, "Not today. I have work to do." His friends laughed and called him boring, but Ethan walked away knowing he had just won an invisible battle. It wasn't a battle against his friends, it was a battle against his old self. And with each victory like this, his new self grew stronger. Ethan's journey wasn't perfect. He still stumbled. There were days he fell back into old habits, moments when he wasted an hour he could never get back. But now, instead of ignoring it, he noticed it. He felt the sting of lost time more sharply than ever. And because he recognized the cost, he corrected himself faster. He had learned the most important lesson. Self-discipline isn't about being flawless, it's about refusing to give up when you fall. Each slip became a lesson, and each lesson pushed him forward. Months later, the results of his new exams were announced. This time, Ethan didn't just pass, he excelled. He rose to the top of his class again, reclaiming the position he once thought he had lost forever. But more than the grades, what mattered most was the quiet pride he saw in his parents' eyes, the respect that returned in his teachers' smiles, and the confidence that bloomed within himself. He had proven to himself that change was possible. That discipline could turn failure into triumph. That valuing time could rewrite his future. As Ethan's story was unfolding, something remarkable happened at school. One of his classmates, Daniel, who had also been struggling with procrastination, approached him and asked, "How did you do it? How did you turn everything around?" Ethan smiled, remembering the countless nights of temptation he had fought through, the tears he had shed after his failure, the wisdom his grandfather had shared. He didn't give Daniel a long lecture. Instead, he said one sentence, "I stopped thinking I had more time, and I started acting like today was all I had." Daniel didn't fully understand in that moment, but those words planted a seed. Slowly, Ethan realized his journey wasn't just for himself. By changing his life, he was inspiring others to do the same. One evening, Ethan visited his grandfather again. He shared his improved results, his discipline, and how he had begun helping others. His grandfather listened quietly, then said with a smile, "Now you understand, Ethan. Time is the greatest teacher, but it's also the cruelest. It teaches lessons only after it's too late. The wise ones learn from the regrets of others, but the foolish wait until they create regrets of their own." Ethan nodded, remembering David, remembering his own failure, and realizing that his story could have easily ended differently. But because he had chosen to change, he had turned the tide. His grandfather leaned in and added something that stayed with him forever, "Every day, you are writing your life story. The ink is time. If you waste the ink, the pages will be empty. But if you use it wisely, your story will inspire generations." Ethan left that night with a fire in his heart. He understood that his life was no longer about chasing temporary pleasures, it was about building a legacy. As months turned into years, Ethan's habits solidified into a way of life. He didn't just succeed in academics, he began to pursue other passions, reading, learning new skills, networking with ambitious people. He discovered that valuing time wasn't just about studying harder, it was about living smarter. He cut away the noise of meaningless distractions and filled his days with actions that moved him closer to his goals. Slowly, opportunities began to appear. People respected his discipline. Mentors wanted to guide him. Friends began to admire his focus instead of mocking it. The same boy who was once seen as careless was now seen as unstoppable. But life, as always, tested him again. In his final year of school, Ethan faced an opportunity to join a competition that could open doors for his future career. It required preparation, long hours, and focus. At the same time, a new popular game had taken over the internet, and many of his classmates were hooked. They spent nights playing, laughing, competing virtually while neglecting their studies. The pull of joining them was strong. Ethan stood at a crossroads. On one side was comfort, laughter, and temporary fun. On the other side was effort, sweat, and the possibility of something bigger. For a brief moment, the old voice whispered inside him, "Relax. You still have time." But this time, Ethan recognized that voice for what it truly was, the voice of failure. He turned away from it and chose discipline once again. For weeks, he worked tirelessly, preparing for the competition. And when the day arrived, his performance stunned everyone. He won not only the top prize but also the attention of people who could help him build his future. That victory wasn't just about talent, it was about time. It was proof that when you invest your hours wisely, the return is greater than you can imagine. That night, as he held his trophy, Ethan whispered to himself, "This is the price of valuing time. And it's worth everything." Time is the one currency we can never replenish, the only treasure that once spent is gone forever. Yet, so many live as though their supply is infinite, scattering it on things that neither nurture the soul nor build a future. The story of wasted time is not just a parable, but a mirror reflecting the very choices we all make daily. You may not squander your days on endless television or idle chatter, but perhaps you delay chasing that idea, avoid that difficult conversation, or put off the small habits that build greatness. In those delays hides the same danger as idleness, the erosion of life's most precious asset. People often mistake movement for progress, busyness for purpose. They fill calendars, scroll endlessly, run from task to task, but when night falls, they cannot point to a single meaningful stride. The lazy waste time by doing nothing, but the distracted waste it by doing everything except the essential. Both reach the same destination, regret. And regret is a heavy cloak to wear in the autumn of life. Think of those who changed history. They did not simply work harder, they worked truer. Every day they treated time as sacred. They carved their hours with intention, focusing not on noise but on necessity. That is what separates a fulfilled life from a wasted one. Success is not about stuffing more into your hours, but about pouring more of yourself into what truly matters. But here is the hopeful truth: you are not doomed by your past waste. Time may be unreturnable, but its value can multiply when you honor it starting now. A single year of intentional living can surpass decades of wandering. A single day of clear focus can change the course of your story. The past may hold wasted chapters, but the pen is still in your hand, and the blank pages ahead are waiting. Imagine waking tomorrow and treating each hour as though it were pure gold. You would rise with energy, not slump with excuses. You would spend less time complaining and more time creating. The conversations you avoided, you would face. The dreams you postponed, you would pursue. Suddenly, your days would not blur into months, and months into years. Instead, they would stack like bricks, building a legacy that outlives you. Yet most people wait. They wait for the right season, the perfect motivation, the guaranteed success. In doing so, they waste the only certainty they ever had, the moment in front of them. Time does not pause until you feel ready. It moves forward, indifferent to your hesitation. The greatest lie is that you still have plenty left. No one knows. And that unknown is not a threat, but a gift, a reason to live with urgency now. The boy in the story learned this truth too late, and his regret became his shadow. But you, listening to this now, still breathe, still choose, still hold the chance to shift your path. The question is whether you will take it. Stories do not exist to entertain alone, they exist to warn, to guide, to wake you up. Consider this your wake-up call. When you close your eyes tonight, think carefully, did you treat today as though it mattered? If tomorrow were your last, would you be proud of how you spent it? Or would you scramble, wishing for more that will never arrive? The answer is not meant to haunt you, but to push you. Each dawn is a second chance to choose better, to waste less, to live more. Do not let your story become another tale of what could have been. Do not let your name echo only as a cautionary example. Choose to stand among those who valued their time, who turned ordinary days into extraordinary legacies. Because when your final hour arrives, the only question that will matter is whether you truly lived, or merely waited. And the choice, as always, is yours.